Below Deck Med just aired its most confusing episode of the season, and the producers left a massive clue they didn't want you to see. We were all convinced that the primary Los, or Carlos, was an absolute nightmare. We saw the complaints, we heard the crew's frustration, and we saw the infamous summoning of the chef. But then, the tip meeting. The biggest tip of all. These two realities cannot coexist. This wasn't a bad charter, this was a bad edit. In this analysis, we are pulling the receipts and exposing the precise moments the production team manipulated the narrative and why they did it. Welcome to the dossier. Let's start with the setup. The narrative of Below Deck Med requires conflict. But more than that, it requires the crew to be the protagonists. For the crew to be heroes, they must overcome a dragon. In episode 6, Carlos was cast as the dragon. We are introduced to this charter with an air of apprehension. The crew seems stressed. But the first major crime we see is the infamous Barcelona Gothic Quarter comment. The guest mentions he's already seen it and would rather be on the water. The edit immediately cuts to a crew member's reaction in a confessional, painting the comment as arrogant and ungrateful. But let's apply critical analysis. This is a yachting vacation. The entire point is to be on the water. The guest's preference is logical. The arrogance is not in the statement itself, but in the editing. The juxtaposition of his comment against a frustrated reaction from the crew, which could have been filmed hours or even days earlier. The second piece of evidence production used against him was the guest who summoned the chef. The word choice is harsh. It implies a gross power dynamic, and the show wanted you to feel that. But watch the clip again. Look at the other guest's body language. Was this a demand, or was it a poor choice of words by a guest? Perhaps one for whom English is a second language that was said in jest? The edit makes sure to cut before you can see the full, unvarnished context. We don't see the laughter or the casual nature of the table. We only see the trigger word and the resulting offense taken by the crew. This brings us to the core of the inconsistency, the tip. We sat through 45 minutes of what was presented as a high-tension, low-gratitude charter. The crew seemed miserable. The guests seemed demanding. And then Captain Sandy announces the tip. It's the biggest of the season. Let's be clear. Horrible, arrogant, truly awful people do not leave massive tips. People who felt the service was lacking do not leave massive tips. The only scenario where a guest from hell leaves a huge tip is one in which they were not the guest from hell at all. This tip is the receipt. It is the objective data that invalidates the subjective narrative production spent the entire episode building. What this proves is that 90% of the positive interactions from this charter were left on the cutting room floor. Production must have hours of footage of Los and his friends complimenting the food, thanking the stews, and having a fantastic time. They chose not to show it. Why? Because a story of nice guests have a nice time is boring. It doesn't create drama. It doesn't give the crew an obstacle to overcome. So what is the truth of Charter 6? The evidence doesn't point to a guest from hell. It points to a production department in need of drama. Los and his friends were not the villains. They were the material. They were edited down, clipped, and frankenbitten to create a story that simply wasn't true, and the tip check is the one piece of data that proves it. This confirms that we must watch the rest of this season not as a documentary, but as a heavily curated narrative. Always follow the money. And in this case, the tip money tells the real story. That's the breakdown. But the final verdict is yours. What key piece of evidence did I miss? Leave your theory below. Subscribe to Beyond the Take so you're ready for the next case.